Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me at benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcast because People of Distinction is a nationally and internationally syndicated show because of listeners like you. Our shows are available across all major podcast distributors as well as YouTube. And if you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. We appreciate the support. Continue to like and follow and sit back and strap in because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Phyllis S. Lyons. And we're going to be discussing her amazing book, Remove the Cone from My Head. That's available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the regular online book resellers. Head on over there today, pick up your copies, and get lost in this amazing book. And while you're at it, check back in frequently because, Phyllis isn't done yet. All right, this book was the precipice. There is a lot more on the way. There's another book that's still in creation, but you're going to want to check back in frequently because it's going to be released very early on in 2025. And that one, wait for it, is called What the Fuck Happened? And now, there's layers to it. You're going to understand what brought that question on through the discussion here on this book. But I tell you, people, we can use that phrase for a number of things in our lives because there's a lot of confusion, especially what's going on right now. And I know a lot of you out there listening in right now, you're like, Benji, she took the words right out of my mouth, man, because I'm thinking the same thing. I don't know what's happening right now. I get it. Phyllis is feeling the same way. It may be for a different reason, but she's feeling the same way. All right. So again, head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, purchase your copies today. Now, before we go any further, I want to make sure that I point out the fact that Phyllis was brought to our network, People of Distinction today, by one of the best publishing firms in the business. And people you already know, I'm talking about Orion Press Books. So if you're a writer out there, you've gone through your process creating your masterpiece, and now you need help moving the book you just developed. Contact Orion Press. This is what they specialize in. You're going to want to head on over to orionpressbooks.com and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. And listen, people, it is an absolute pleasure. I really do mean this, an honor to have Phyllis here on the line. The moment we start to discuss her book, man, you're going to understand why this is something that you need to add to your shelf. Understand that we're going to learn things from Phyllis's life. Learn things from her perspective when she was a child and things that happened to her. But understand the reason why I think this book is so powerful is it's much larger than her. Yeah, it's her book. It's written from her perspective. But this is something that symbolizes something that is much bigger than Phyllis S. Lyons. It's written from that child's perspective, as I mentioned, and this book showcases how adults are responsible for the mindset of our children, right? People understand, I'm not talking just to my parents out there. I'm talking to every single adult that either has a platform that can reach children or has a direct relationship with children. Now, there's not many of us out there that have no ties to children whatsoever. So if you have a child yourself, if you have a family member that is a child, if you are an educator, understand, listen up and listen well. Your words have power. They carry weight. And we are going to talk about when those words are placed in a way that is just downright degrading. I was trying to find a way to articulate this in a fashion that would be creative, but no, I'm just going to be blunt. I'm going to be right to the point. We're going to talk about some words that were said to Phyllis that were degrading. The words that were said to Phyllis that were destructive or could have been destructive. People, we have to understand that when we're talking to children, they are impressionable. The words that we are putting forth to them can stick with them and influence them in ways that may not be apparent to you today. It may not even be apparent 5 or 10 years down the line, but certain words can stick with them for decades and shape the individuals that they become. Now, the opposite side of that coin is we understand that we have the opportunities and the power to shape them in a much more positive and powerful way. Well, sometimes we don't do the best jobs with that. And there's a lot more that can be said. There's a lot more that will be said. As of right now, I'm going to close it out. I'm going to invite Phyllis here on the line with us because, listen, this is her book. It's her life. She's lived it. She's going to be able to articulate everything much better than I ever could. Sit back, strap in. Phyllis, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, and I want to say thank you for Orion and yourself invited me on today. This is truly an honor for me to be here. Thank you very much, and for the listeners as well. Thank you.
Phyllis, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Listen, the honor is all ours. As a parent myself, when we were doing research for this book in preparation for the interview, I'm not going to lie, man, there were certain parts of me that were saddened, but there were parts of me that were also enraged to know. And again, just, trying to put myself in the situation. My children, thankfully, are too young where they haven't actually started their scholastic career yet. But my goodness, man, I understand that there's only so much I can protect them from. And when they go out into that world, I have to have faith that they're going to be taken care of in ways that they are getting taken care of at home. And to hear that happened to you in such a way that it's not surprising that it happens, because as, someone that is involved in a lot of different communities, I know a lot of educators. So I understand certain pressures that they're dealing with and certain things that happen. But no one should ever address a child in the way that you were addressed. And I'm so sorry that happened. But because of you writing this book, you're going to open a lot of eyes. And you're going to open a lot of perspectives to think twice before they open their mouths. And this is something we're crossing our fingers, we're hoping for. But I have faith and I believe that it's going to happen. Before we jump into your book, Phyllis, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background. And I understand that this book is a memoir of sorts because it's going to go into your background. If there's overlap, not a problem whatsoever. But start off by telling us a little bit more about yourself.
First of all, like you said, my name is Phyllis Lyons, and I have 3 children, and they are all adults, which I have 2 daughters and 1 son. I was very blessed to come from a very loving family. My father was military, and my mom at that time had a challenge within herself, because my mom she just recently passed away, a minister and a pastor of a church. Thank you. So during that time, a lot of people, and especially the male population, they really weren't into women ministry. So I had an opportunity to see from a child the struggles that my mom had pursuing her career and what her purpose was. And then with my father being in the military, that gave us a very wide, broadened outlook on life, because we had an opportunity to travel to different states. And I left the United States when I was 6 years old, and I didn't come back to the United States until I was 18. And at the time, before I left the United States, we were, of course, lived on a military base, and we went to military schools. And by me being born in the middle 50s, then we all kind of know how that arena was going on at that time. Even though on a military base, you are neighbors with every nationality. That did not mean that each individual still had the compassion and the understanding of diversity,
Right.
because each person, just because they're on the base, they're going to bring who they are and how they've been raised and what they think to the base.
Mm-hmm.
So in me going to a military school on the base, at that time there was only three African American small children. Because at 6 years old, as far as I'm concerned, you're still a baby. You're that's what I call a baby.
Yeah.
You know, even though you're walking and talking, but you're a baby. And most children at 6 years old, the only thing they want to do is play with your dolls and make mud pies and pretend that you got the tea set going with the little tea set and you put in the water. You're just interested in being a kid. And then when you come from a loving family that does not teach you any discrepancies in the human beings, they just teach you two qualities.
Mm-hmm.
Either you're good or you're bad. Either you're polite or you're not polite. Either you treat people with respect or you don't treat them with respect. Your word is your bond. If you say you're going to do something, then it's done with a handshake. Keeping in mind that's in the middle 50s.
Mm-hmm.
This is 2024. Those concepts are not even nowhere in place. So I had a chance to grow up freely in my mind as a child. But my parents always made me feel, right along with my two brothers, that we could do anything, we could accomplish anything. We were great, we were beautiful, we were loved, we were as good as anybody else. So they poured into us all of those positive affirmations. The confusion came to me as a child once I left the door and I had to go to the military school. They had different opinions about different cultures of people, and especially me being a little black girl. But I didn't see it that way. And during that time, because their conversations were so negative towards anybody that was African American, they began to say things. I know this may sound kind of crazy, but they were saying things that we didn't hear in my house. And my parents were very in control of what we watched on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, the majority of things that we watched was Bonanza, the cartoons, the Road Runner. You know, we looked at things that children would look at. When it came to the politics, and if they were above our understanding, and my parents wasn't ready to poison our mind with what the TV had to say, they made sure that we didn't see any of that because we were very sheltered in being a military environment.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's good, but as I got older, they meant well, but for what they were trying to do to us and for us, it has taken the world all of that time from the 50s up to 2024 to maybe kind of seem like that they got it. It's a difference being a person that is now, I am now 70 years old. I'm a grown woman with grown children and a grandchild. So the things that I have experienced as a mature woman and understanding life is totally different than a child at 6.
Yeah.
So it's no fair of a comparison. Literally, I never could understand it until I got to be older. My parents made sure that we studied together. They made sure that we were intelligent, smart children, and that we would be able to excel. But once I got to school, the teacher, I will never forget her name. And I called her name. I'm more than sure she's dead now. Her name was Mrs. Pendleton. And she was a redhead lady. And I sat up in the front of the class, And the gentleman, the little boy that sat next to me, his name was Johnny. And Johnny's parents came from the environment of being on a farm. But the father joined the military, and they kind of changed their perspective. And they weren't accustomed to living next door to an African-American person, more or less going to school with one. So every Friday we took a spelling test, and I always got straight A's. But the gentleman, the little boy that was next to me, maybe now we would maybe consider him as a slow learner. And during that time, the information that they would give to us as little teeny tiny people were, you're not good enough. You will never amount to nothing. We don't expect anything from you. And what we do expect from you, you will be good at shining shoes. You will be good at working on a farm. You'll be excellent at being someone's maid. You would be good maybe being a school teacher in an all-black school, or you may be good at being a hairstylist. My goal was to be a lawyer. I've always wanted to be a lawyer. But when I got to school, they would tell me that my brain was not equipped to learn anything, and there was no need to waste my time in looking for the white people's opportunities that come to only white folks. So as I began to ask questions, she felt that I was being disrespectful to her as a white woman. And with me being a child, I did not have the right to give an opinion because my opinion was not even accepted. So at that time, they had a cone, just like the same cones that you see in the roads when the construction workers are making something. They put the cones in the road, and you know not to go past it. The cones that they had, they were white, and they had a tall black stool. And she would tell me, Mrs. Pendleton, because you're being disrespectful, the other students get a chance to participate in your punishment. So at 6, I became afraid of something like a punishment. What you mean a punishment? And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, my mom is not here, and nobody has ever punished me before. My mother and father, they talked to me if I did something bad. Of course, I got a spanking, and it was probably worth it, like running in the street or doing something like that. And these children, this was during recess, they were able to literally take the notebook paper and ball it up in balls. And she only allowed the white boys to do it. The girls, they didn't participate. So I'm in this room when everyone has gone to recess with these white boys and this white teacher. And she's allowing them to put spit on the paper and ball it up and throw it at me. And I had to turn my face to the corner, and they were able to call me nigger. They were able to call me, what is it? Spoon or coon or whatever.
Coon, yeah.
Jungle bunny. To say I was just a nigger animal. They didn't even call me a child. They said I was a nigger animal. And I went through that for maybe a couple of weeks. And then this was the thing that made me tell my mom. Johnny, which was a little white boy that sat next to me, and because he had a learning disability, she literally would mark an X across my paper in red, even though it said I made an A+ 100, and she would take the red marker and put underneath it, you got an F. And I could not understand, how do you have an A and 100, but you tell me I have an F? So she would tell the whole class, we're going to take Phyllis's grade and we're going to give it to Johnny because he's a white boy that's going to grow up being a white man. And because of this, he needs to have the records indicating that academically he is smarter than this nigger. How dare this nigger be smarter than you when you're not supposed to be smart? Mm-hmm. So I don't know what your parents is telling you at home, but you will never be nothing as a nigger child. And I'm going to take your grade from you, and I'm going to give it to Johnny. You will not pass on to the next grade. What we will do is say that you're so dumb, we're going to transfer you to the next grade. So when I came home crying in a row like I was, but I couldn't really explain to my mom what that was. And I kept telling her, I'm afraid, Mom, they're going to do something to me. And she said, who is they? And then I began to tell her about Mrs. Pendleton and what she did and what she said and how she allowed the little white boys to put the spit on the paper and throw it at me and call me all kind of names, and how she took my grades and said that niggers don't make 100 plus A's, you make F's. So we need to, she used the word deflate at that time. I never will forget it. We need to deflate your mind so you can stay in your place. So my environment has dictated my behavior, the way I talk, the way I act. That's my environment that taught me these so-called prim and proper things. But in their culture, that's not prim and proper. That's just a way of life. That's how you act. That's how you perceive things. This is how you have a demeanor of integrity. All of those things of good qualities were put into me. At the same time, the negative stuff was there. So it was a long confusion of what both people were saying, and I'm confused as I can be. I hear the good side, and then I'm looking at the bad side, but can't nobody tell me why. So as I began to go to clinical psychiatrists, when I got back to America, the clinical psychiatrists, they did not know what to do or to say to me as a Black young woman now at 18, because it wasn't the norm in 69 for Black people to be going to no clinical psychiatrist. And because they come from an environment themselves of the way they have been determined for them to think. So here I am, and they're looking at me like, are you serious? You mean to tell me you don't know what it is for the racism and the prejudice that's going on in America? Where have you been? I said, I just came from another country. And I don't understand what the problem is. I said, can you tell me why? Just tell me why. What did I do to be hated like that? I haven't done nothing to nobody. I don't understand it, and my parents can't tell me. That's why they're sending me here. Can you tell me? And he said, no, because you're the first Black child, period, that's ever come to us with these types of questions. This is in the DNA of white people, that we were taught not to like you. I said, so am I wasting my time? She said, I can't tell you anything else. I don't know how to help you. Can you imagine that? Mm. So I stayed confused more and more and more. And then that's when Angela Davis came along. Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud, with James Brown. Then I figured, I said, well, maybe I need to join their group. Maybe this is going to help me to heal. Maybe this is going to help me to feel better. But at that movement, people were mad and they were angry because there was no equalness And here I am still a young woman not understanding. And then I became angry with my parents. I said, why did you teach me to have this kind of love and to be this nice and to be this prim and proper and all of this stuff? When coming back to the United States, you knew that the chances that I was going to have to really expound on who I am was going to be difficulty. And my mom would say again, we did not want to corrupt your mind with all of that negativity. We wanted to give you a choice to make a decision on what you wanted to think about. But we wanted to set a foundation to you, a great foundation. So as you mature in this world, you would still be able to make a decision on who you are and who you become and who you can love and who you can't love. And above all, the integrity is most important. Regardless of what other people do or say, this is your foundation. And it's going to take you where you want to be eventually. It's going to be noticed eventually. People are going to accept you eventually. And you're going to do the things that you want to do and what you're achieving in your life at this time. You will have to come to a point that you got to believe that you are a good person. You got to believe that you're worthy. You got to believe that what they said to you is not true. And they did it out of malice and hatred because they saw your potential as a young child. And they knew if I can dim her light while she's young, then maybe she can just be a regular statistic and be in the category of what we assume that she's supposed to be and not what she was supposed to become. So once I had to go to the university, the P3 University in Atlanta, Georgia, I flew back and forward for 2 years straight from Sacramento to Atlanta to the university to check in. That was one of the best things that I ever happened to me, because when I got to Atlanta, which was 2 years ago, the instructor, the professor, the dean of the college was a retired lieutenant, an African-American woman. And that was my first time ever having an African-American teacher in my life. So once I was there, everything that was imprinted in my mind, that's when the healing began. Because when I was at this university, I had never seen in all my life those many educated, beautiful Black people that was multimillionaires, and they had it going on. They were 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and they were doctors, and they were lawyers, they were engineers, they were biophysics. Mm-hmm. Oh, my God. My whole world just lit up like a Christmas tree. I'm like, you were a real doctor? In my mind. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't want to embarrass myself. And you're a real biophysicist? Yeah, and these are young people. But like they said, in the South, we were demanded to get an education. They didn't care what we was going through. You will be successful. You're going to do this. And then they went to all Black universities. They went to all Black colleges. And those that was fortunate enough to go to other diversity colleges, they had the same testimony that I have. They went through the traumatization just like I did. But for whatever dynamics that they had going on in their DNA allowed them to constantly manifest what it was, and they were determined of whatever it is that's standing in my way. I am not going to allow that to deter me from getting to where it was, what it is that I needed to do. And that was one of the requirements that we had to do. We had to write a book in 28 days. That was one of the requirements that we had to do in order for me to get my certificate and do stuff. So I was like, write a book in 28 days? What in the world am I going to write about? And she says, that's up to you. And I learned the difference between regular words that you and I use. We know the meaning of them, but we need to put them in the correct sentences. And I would always say to her, I'm trying my very best to get this done. And I'm at a block. She says, well, let me help you. A very stern woman. She wasn't playing about nothing. In other words, she didn't want to hear your excuses. She didn't want to hear nothing that you had to say. And her name is Dr. Sonia, the P3 University in Atlanta, Georgia. I'd never seen a teacher like that in my life. She said, let me help you with the words. She said, why are you trying to do something? I said, because I am. She said, that's why you're not getting it done. Because you need to go from trying to commit. Put that in your vocabulary. Quit trying to do it. You need to commit to doing it. And when you commit to do it, it doesn't matter hell or high water. She said, I'm not trying to be mean. If the dog died, I don't care. If you had to go to the hospital, you better take a note with you and write it down. Because this is where you're in the real world now, Miss Phyllis. And you need to commit through, and this is what she said, through all the bullshit. That's what she told me. And that just sparked me again.
Absolutely.
She said, she said, you got to quit saying, she said, and that's another thing about religion. Why are there so many people that's in church and you ain't got nothing, but you say you believe in God? Why? I don't understand that. Why haven't you moved from I think God can do it to you need to know that God can do it? And once you know God can do it, that means there should be a renewing and a change of your mind from whatever negativity that was imprinted in your mind, because now it's your responsibility to go back and be debriefed in your mind. Now, that's military talk. Civilian people don't know nothing about being debriefed. But I understood that. And then I asked, how do you renew your mind when you have been poisoned with so much negativity and oppositions? She said, that's when you commit to what it is that you want to do and be in life. So that's how that book got started, because I knew I had 28 days to get it done. And she didn't care nothing about nothing. You will get it done, or you're not going to be passing my class. And you will come in here every 2.5 months. I don't want to hear nothing. Catch the plane, be in here. That's all I know. I don't care how you get here, but just what you got to do.
People, there is so much power in her words. And it really, I don't know how you hear what she just said and not reflect and not go through your Rolodex of memories in your particular life's journey and things that you've encountered. And then, inevitably so, people, then you're forced to then reflect on where we currently are and where we're headed, not only here in the States, but from the world perspective. But, we're here in the States, so let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
One statement, and again, I'm not trying to make this political, people. I don't run a political podcast here, but I do think that there is no way to have the discussion that we're having without analyzing where we are as a country. And so much of where we are as a country revolves around where we are politically. We see the division in our political climate, and that is starkly represented amongst our community. I listened to what you were saying, and first and foremost, it goes without saying, Phyllis, but I am so sorry that you had to even deal with that. But we understand the country that we live in, although many of us are trying to change the script right now. They're trying to change history and change the words on those pages. But we can't, people. This stuff actually happened. This stuff, to varying degrees, still happens now. And The phrase that kept coming up, and again, I'm not trying to just jump on that bandwagon and make it political and get enraged in that way, but the phrase that kept coming up as she's speaking was what Donald Trump has run his campaign on in 2016 and now also in 2024 when you bring up the term "Make America Great Again." If he would have stopped at just "Make America Great," I don't like the man. I don't agree with his politics, but I could get behind that message. Make America great. Absolutely, I get it. But he had to add in that "again" portion. And listen, I don't think it was him, somebody behind the scenes working with him. They're the ones that added that in. And I don't think it was by chance, Phyllis. I don't think it was by chance. I don't think it was happenstance that they decided to add that again, because here is the agenda that I am speculating they're wanting to pursue. By adding that "again" there, you're speaking to a very particular community. You're speaking to the white fragility of a lot of people in this country. And a lot of people that even outside of the white community feel as if they're not being heard. So they're now wanting to join sides with those individuals. Well, I got news for those individuals. And again, not going to go down on that tangent here, but you're already starting to see a lot of people from different ethnic backgrounds, from the Black community, from the Latino community, already a week after the election. And they thought, well, listen, I cast my vote for Donald Trump, so I guess I must be part of the in crowd now. And they are unfortunately, sadly mistaken, because they're realizing, I think there's one video that I saw circulating, but I know that there's a lot more because I've seen a lot more. But there's one in particular about a Latino individual who voted for Trump, lives in a predominantly Trump-backed neighborhood. And he thought he was accepted. He sent his children to go and play with the other individuals across the street. And they turned that away very quickly. They started to call him and his children all the regular racist terms you hear, generally geared towards Latino individuals. And a lot of the messages that you're starting to hear now is, we only needed your vote. We don't want anything to do with you besides that. Well, listen, people, when we bring up that phrase, and I know that this is a divisive phrase because a lot of people, they get very angered when you present this. It's similar to the catchphrase "Black Lives Matter." It enrages people because if you allow it to, it's going to force you to actually analyze what that means. Well, if we're talking about "Make America Great Again," the question that has to be addressed is, when was America great to begin with, and who was it great for? Because you're listening to what Phyllis says. I mean, she's not talking about what happened yesterday. She's not talking about what happened a year ago. She's going back. I think you even went back to the 50s. Okay, well, if we knew that this was happening to you in the 50s, and there were educators, people that were hired and put in place to mold the minds of our future generations, that is the way that they were behaving. Okay, so that was happening in the 50s. Okay, Benji, so America wasn't great then. Let's just, all right, it didn't happen then. All right, well, that's fine. Let's go back a little further. Well, we know about the Tulsa race riots. We know about the burning of Black Wall Street. Of course, we know about slavery. Again, although a lot of history books now are trying to change even the concept of slavery to say that there were some beneficial aspects to it. Whew, my goodness. I must have missed that lecture. I think I was absent on that day when I was taking African-American history, Phyllis, because I was under the impression that when you force someone into servitude, man, there's nothing beneficial coming from that. Oh, no, Benji, they learned a specific trade that then they were able to take out into their lives. Oh, is that what we're doing now? Oh, okay. Right. All right. So America wasn't great then. But no, Benji, no, you're missing the point. You're going too far back, brother. Let's go a little further. Let's go more into the future. So we talked about the 50s. Well, let's go even after that. Let's continue to move on forward here. Yeah, we already know from the Black perspective America has never been great for us. We've had some moments where it may have been a little better. It's never been great for us.
Mm-hmm.
But let's look at America,
Right.
where we have children that go to school to learn, and every single day they are in fear of potentially losing their lives. But we have a Congress and a government in place that, God forbid, if we impeach on we can't infringe upon their right to bear arms. So, unfortunately, our children are just going to have to deal with it. And what is the solution that a lot of people present? Well, let's just give the teachers firearms as well. Because, in addition to that learning, Benji, we should also have all-out warfare. People, if I'm crazy, please somebody let me know. Because I'm looking at this situation and I'm saying this is what is presented to us. This is where we are. When the hell was America great? For us to have the audacity of saying we're going to make it great again. That's ironic. That's ironic. People, listen, I'm telling you, there is so much here. I love the discussion that we just had, and understand it starts with this book. All right. There is a lot here. Pick up your copies of Remove the Cone from My Head by Phyllis S. Lyons, and allow it not only to, listen, depending on your background and your circumstances, man, this may just be relatable content, but allow it to not only shift your perception, potentially, but allow it to open up conversations to happen with those around you. Because I promise you, I think that's where the power of this all lies. This entire discussion that we've had today is not just between two passionate individuals. If we can continue this conversation amongst ourselves, amongst everybody in our circles, man, a lot of things are going to start to come to the forefront. And then while you're at it, you're going to want to pick up her next book called What the Fuck Happened? Because when you start having these conversations, I promise you, that's going to be one of the questions that come up. You're going to ask yourself, what the fuck happened? Man, it's perfectly entitled. I love it. I absolutely love it. Phyllis, this has been a profound discussion.
Thank you.
And you are the absolute embodiment of a person of distinction. It was thoroughly our pleasure. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you once again. I would not have had this opportunity if it wasn't for you, and I want to say thank you.